This video will show you how to perform a bushing replacement on a Shark Flex suspension. You will need a flathead screwdriver, a hammer, a rubber mallet, a 13mm socket wrench powered and manual, a 13mm spanner, a 6mm hex key and your new bushings. Place the suspension on its side. Use the back of a hammer to lever the side of the staple that is in the clamp upwards. Once the staple has lifted slightly, place the whole back of the hammer underneath the staple and use it to pull up on the whole staple in the middle. Alternate between levering the side in the clamp and getting fully under it to remove it. If you are unable to remove the staple with the hammer, take a flathead and wedge it underneath, applying upwards force to allow for more space for the hammer to fit. Do the same to the remaining staples. Rotate the suspension so it's standing up with the bottom of the shock facing you. Take a 6mm hex key and begin to remove the bottom two bolts. Once removed, go to the top two bolts and only loosen these by 2 full turns. Stand over the suspension and place your feet on the bottom clamp as shown. Pull the top of the suspension upwards and you should feel a pop from the shock. While upwards pressure is still being applied with one hand, use your other hand to pull the shock out by pulling away from the suspension. Make your way to the top of the suspension by the logo faceplate. Take a 13mm socket wrench and begin removing the 4 nuts that are attached to the U-bolts. When the U-bolts are about to be freed by removing the last nut, place a hand around the back of the suspension and remove the U-bolt from the back. If a U-bolt feels stuck, then just poke it through with your finger from the top. Now, grab the shock absorber and push away from yourself to free it from the suspension and pull it out. Now, take a 13mm socket wrench or power tool and a 13mm spanner. Remove the whole top row of bolts to begin with. If a bolt won't come out, poke it with a hex key or flathead from beneath. Now for the bottom row, only fully remove the middle bolt. Then for the remaining bolts on the sides, only loosen these by 1.5 turns. Do the same to the other side. While the suspension is loosely held together, simply pull one of the sides away and face them clamp side down with the bushings exposed. Take a flathead to help pry the old bushings out of the suspension using the tabs in the center of the sides of the bushings. Take your new bushings and before installing, make sure that the sides that have extra material with the central notch are placed on the outer sides of the clamp. All bushings must be inserted with the extended tabs at the top. Simply slide them in horizontally and make sure the small protrusion in the clamp fits with the notch in the bushing. When placing the middle bushing, it doesn't matter which side the thicker plastic end sits. Just ensure that the bushing tab is at the top and is correctly locked in. Do the same to the remaining half. Be sure to check that all bushings are placed correctly and are locked into place as shown. Take one of the suspension halves and carefully line it up with the connecting points of the other. Once in line, push down so everything pops into place. At this stage, the suspension is held together very loosely. Make sure to hold the two halves together so they don't come apart. Support it until it's able to stand by itself as shown. After doing this, make sure the bushings are still slotted in the correct position. Face either side of the suspension towards you as shown, and with a 13mm socket and 13mm wrench, fasten both the bottom two outer bolts that remained in the suspension. Make sure not to over tighten these. A good way to check this is by ensuring the thread poking out of the nut isn't any more than 3mm from the top of the nut. Flip the suspension over and do the same to the other side. The length of the bolts that are used in the top and bottom row are different. The bolts at the top are longer and the bolts at the bottom are smaller. Place the bolts into the exposed holes, ensuring the long ones are at the top and the smaller one is at the bottom. Using a 13mm socket here is helpful to ensure the threads poke through all the way. From underneath, they should all be the same length as shown. Now take a washer with a nut and place these on finger tight over each thread. Then fasten fully using a 13mm socket and 13mm spanner, remembering not to over tighten. The threads should look how they do on screen. Flip the suspension over and do the same steps to the other side. To reinstall the shock, first make sure that the angle of the rod ends are the same. On screen is an example of one that is out of line. To fix this, hold each rod end by the small stainless bars and use them to twist clockwise. There will be some resistance, but it will spin with some force. Use your eye to make sure that they are the same angle. If they haven't moved since removal, you will be good to go. Once checked, Slide the shock in with the skinny side down and the fatter part at the top where the Shark logo faceplate is. The holes at the top of the clamp should have no bolts in them yet. Lean the suspension back and place the small stainless bar against the slot in the clamp that is made to nestle it. Make sure the bar is sitting fairly central in this slot. Now take the 2 U-bolts and place them through each side with the threads facing upwards, ensuring they cover the stainless bar. Once through, hold it there with one hand and with the other, place a nut over the top thread finger tight to keep it in place. This is how it should look in this area. Now, spin the suspension around so the Shark logo is facing you. Place the remaining 2 nuts over the lower threads, then fasten with a 13mm socket. For these nuts, it is best to use a manual tool, not a powered one. In the same position that was used to remove the bottom of the shock, stand with your feet over the bottom clamp and pull up. While applying upwards force with one hand, pull the bottom of the shock towards you and the stainless rod will pop into place under the semi-loosened bolts. Use a flathead screwdriver alongside a 6mm hex key to avoid the rod from moving while tightening. Place the flathead vertically and slot it into the left side gap where the stainless rod sits within the clamp. Then, tighten the top right bolt with a 6mm hex key until it just touches the stainless rod. Once this one is tightened, you can remove the flathead and fasten the remaining top left bolt. Now, simply place the remaining 2 bottom bolts and tighten until the bolt heads just touch the stainless rod. Flip the suspension on its side and take the staples and rubber mallet. Line up the staples with the pre-drilled holes and hammer them in, focusing your force on the side that is in the clamp. Hammer them until you can just get the end of a flathead screwdriver underneath. Some staples may appear not to line up with the holes, but if you place the clamp side in first, then lightly tap while aiming the other side of the staple, they will fit. Once all of the staples are hammered back in, your flex suspension is fit for use.